All right. Hi, everybody. My name's Irene Pasternack. I'm teaching Feldenkrais for Northwest Parkinson's. Today, I have a lovely, fun lesson that's all about power and voice. And that also does a good job of fall-proofing you. So it's a fun combination of things. So let's start with a measurement move, which is to count out loud. I better mute everybody before we do this. Let me mute all. Okay. So you're now muted. If you want to talk, you can unmute yourself if you have a question or something as we go. So I'd like you to count, start at 1 and go as high as you can, just counting quietly out loud, and see how far you get before you run out of breath. So give that a try. Okay. Good. And how did you know you were out of breath? What was the sensation in your body that says, I better not say anymore? And try it again, but this time try it a little bit louder, because that'll help you feel the sensations when you run out of breath. And then try it again and see if you can stop just before that sensation of your throat tightening. Like, how do you know you're approaching the end of your breath? And then one more time, do it. And this time, notice your resonance in your voice. So you could put your hand lightly on your Adam's apple, on your voice box, and feel the resonance. And as you're listening for that, notice how powerful do you feel? If you were counting blast off, would the person who's igniting the rocket feel comfortable, like going, sure, yeah, they mean it? Okay, great. So that's like one of the measurements of this, and there's a few more. We always start with a few things at the beginning so you feel the differences at the end. Notice the distance from your two shoulders, the amount of, if you were measuring a line from your shoulders across the front of yourself and across the back of yourself, just notice which line feels longer. And does one line feel tighter than the other? Like if your skin was clothing, is your skin tighter on the front of yourself or on the back of yourself? Does it feel stretched on one side? And then take one hand and put it on the back of your neck. Just feel the shape of the back of your neck. And lift your chin a little bit and feel how the back of your neck scrunches up. And then tuck your chin in a little and feel how the back of your neck lengthens. And if it's comfortable, use your other hand to do the same thing. Just to feel how far your chin is from your chest and the relationship of that to the shape of the back of your neck. Sometimes I talk about the canaries in the coal mine, but by paying attention to these things, they're things that you can begin to notice in your daily life. And then when you feel, oh, I remember it felt a lot better when I did that, you have that memory to go back to. Okay. And then where are you over your sit bones right now? So just kind of bounce around in your chair to feel where your sit bones are. And when I asked, were you sitting a little bit behind your sit bones? Were you sitting a little off to one side of your sit bones? Or in front? Was there a little bit more weight on one than the other? Go ahead and put your hand underneath one sit bone. Find that sit bone. This is your point of balance and support when you're sitting, so it's really important to just kind of know its shape. You need, with your fingers, feel the bone. And then take your hand out and see if that side is just relaxed a little bit into the chair. And then wake up your other sit bone. Does this one feel bigger or smaller than the other one? Sometimes it's one of them feels bigger or clearer in our sensations than the other. And then put your bottom down. And come on up to the front of your chair. So you're sitting on the edge. And with your, we're going to do a little bit more exploration of breath as a measurement. So if you think about your whole torso as this big hollow thing, I mean, it's not really, but it feels like that when we breathe in. And you take a breath in, you could put one hand on your belly and one on your back, on your low back, and rest the back of your hand against your low back. And breathe in and feel, does the air go equally into the front and back of you there? Or does it go more in the front or more in the back? And then put your hands on the sides of your waist. You could rest the back of your hand lightly there or the front, probably more comfortable, I don't know, whichever is more comfortable. And breathe in and see if the air goes equally into both sides of you. Or does it feel like it goes one side first and then the other side? Like there's a little tiny delay. And then rest your hands and take a breath in and notice if the air goes up and down equally. So when you take a full breath, some people will feel it down in their pelvic floor area. You might feel a little change in the pressure against the chair. And you might feel some pressure going up toward your head and toward your shoulders. And see there if you have a habit, does the air go more toward the top first or the bottom first? If you were inflating a pool toy and you were the pool toy, which part would pop open first? And then in this shape of the inside of ourself, there are the diagonal lines. So pick a diagonal, one shoulder and the opposite hip, and try and inflate both of those at the same time. And see if inflating your diagonals, you have a habit. If the top one goes and then the bottom one, or the bottom one and then the top. I kind of visualize the shoehorn in there, but one end of the shoehorn moves a little more than the other. And then try your other diagonal. Okay. And then roll back on your sit bones. Kind of sit behind it like you're slumped in a couch. Lean against your chair if you want to. Just kind of Be mellow. And now take a breath in and feel, where is it restricted? And maybe where does it go a little easier? And then come forward over your sit bones so that if you drew a line from the top of your spine down, it would land on the floor between your thighs. And take a breath in there and see where the air goes. Can it go in all of those directions that we talked about at once? Front, back, left, right, top, bottom. And when you're in this position where, I think of it, if my nose was dripping, it would land about where my heels are, halfway between the line of the two heels. Feel the shape of the back of your neck. You could do it with your hand. You could sense by where your chin is, relationship to your chest, how your shoulders feel. Okay. And then slide back so that you're behind your sit bones again, and see what that does to the back of your neck and your chin. And then with your sit bones, grab your chair and tilt yourself to that forward place where your drippy nose is even on the line between your two heels. Okay. Now, bring your heels and your knees together and breathe in and feel, where is that restricted? And then take your knees and your feet and make them nice and wide, quite a bit wider than your bottom. And let your nose drip in that spot between the heels. And breathe in and feel what that feels like. Okay. And now we're going to begin playing with the things that matter for power. But power is always there when our breath is big rather than when it's constricted. So for this next bit, we're going to just stand up right in front of the computer, right where you are. So go ahead and stand up. And shift your weight onto your right foot. And then come back. And do it again, beginning to notice what happens in your left foot. Okay. And notice if your left foot rolls more toward the big toe side of the ball of your foot, or more toward the outside of the ball of your foot. And try a little of each. So once use the big toe side of your foot, the inside edge, to push yourself over onto your right foot. And once use the ball of the toe right under the fourth to push yourself over. Okay. Now, which feels more powerful? More like if there was something over there that you wanted to push over, you could push it over. And as you, let's go to deliberately doing the inside edge. So use the inside edge and the big toe to push you over. And feel, how do you stabilize yourself to stay over there? What muscles do you feel tighten? I don't care about names. It's just like you could put even your hand on your hip or your thigh, of feeling, what do you use? What do you do with your breath to hold yourself over there? And then using the big toe, push yourself over there, Stay there and breathe in and feel where can the air go and where can it not go. It might even feel a little challenging to breathe in that position, like it gets stuck somehow. Okay. Come back to the middle and relax for a moment. And then put the weight under the fourth toe and shift yourself over there. And feel if you get a little taller and find a little less need to stabilize with your breath and the muscles around your hip. If standing is uncomfortable, you can do this whole thing sitting down. So know that you can always do that. So there, instead of using your foot, you're transferring, well, you're still using your feet to push you over onto that side. Okay. So go back and forth, contrasting where do you stabilize when you use the big toe and where do you stabilize when you use the fourth. Which makes your neck feel longer when you go over there. Okay. Now, walk over in your room to a wall. Find a wall that, let's see, which foot were you just going on? Everybody was going onto their right foot, right? Okay, so find a wall that you can stand next to with your right shoulder right next to the wall. So better if it doesn't have a picture on that little piece of a wall because you're going to be pushing. A door would be fine. And I'll try and talk loud because I know you're away from your computers. And cozy right up to that wall. So your right shoulder is against it. Depending on your body shape, your right hip might be against it. And I want you to try to push that wall over. But when you do this pushing, let the pushing come on gently. So it's not like trying to poke a hole in the wall by a sharp punch. It's you touch the wall and you just gradually increase the pressure to push that wall. And experiment. Do you get more power if your left foot is rolling in toward the big toe or is staying out toward the fourth? See if you can sense. It's almost like if you were back in high school in physics class and there were the lines of force, the vector lines, there's an angle that you can feel. Rich, if this standing up is uncomfortable, if you could put a chair near the wall to push into it, or maybe your lovely wife would be willing to stand next to you and you could push against her with your shoulder to get this feeling of when do you feel more powerful if your foot is, which position the foot is in. And which position do you have more breath? If you were pushing a piece of furniture or pushing a car, which one could you keep going because you can breathe easier? Good. Okay, walk around a little bit. Or if you're sitting, just rest and breathe. And see if that made you a little lopsided in your walking. If one foot might be finding it a little easier. Now, I need to check in with everybody because this is one of those moves that you can overdo it. I don't want you to overdo this pressing to hurt yourself. So you want to stay comfortable, and it's more like you're looking for this line of force. Like if I had some special machine and was shining it on you and I could just see this line from the top of your head to your foot as you're pushing. Okay, everybody sit down for a moment. And just as you're sitting, come back to the two lines that we played with in the beginning, the line on the front of your shoulders and the back of your shoulders. And see if there's some way that it feels different on your left and right sides. If the tension in the two sides of you is different across those lines. If the lengths have changed from the beginning. And then for those of you who are standing, are comfortable standing, come back up to standing. If you're sitting, sit on the front of your chair with your knees wide. And begin exploring this going over to your left foot. So as your weight comes over to your left foot, what was the default thing you did with your right? Did it roll? Did the knee come in and you roll toward the big toe a little? Or did the foot stay with the weight under the fourth? Do you press more with your heel or more with the ball of the foot to get you over there? What does your upper body do? When you push with the inside edge of the foot, does your head go a little further than your hips and your feet? And when you push more with the outside edge, the fourth toe side of your foot, do your ribs come a little further to the side? And for a few times, do the inside edge to feel where do you stabilize. You might feel something in your groin area, in the front of the hip, in your bottom, and in your breath that helps hold you there. And then do this inside edge one and try and breathe in once you're on your right foot, your left foot. So your weight on your left foot and you're feeling your breath. Where does it get restricted? And then try again with the outside edge of the foot or the fourth toe side. And see if you can feel that long line of force going through your body. That there's something that's energized from your foot up through your leg, up through your spine, up through the top of your head. Okay, and then walk around for a moment. Just to give yourself a break from sensing and doing. And come back onto your left. I'm having trouble remembering my lefts and rights. The second foot that you were doing, come back onto that one and try it once each way with the foot rolling in and the foot out. But this time, once you're over there, so let's start by the foot rolling in toward the big toe and you're over on that side, and count and see how high you can count while you're over on that side with the big toe side of you getting you there. And then come back to the middle and get over there by keeping your weight out under the fourth to push you over there. And count and see if you can count for longer or shorter. Okay. And then walk over to your wall. Find your wall again. And this time, put your other side against the wall. Cozy right up to it with your shoulder and your hips. So some of you, it looks like it's the same side as before. Put the other side of yourself against the wall. Yeah, your left side against the wall. And use your right foot and experiment with the sensations of power, of the clarity of the line of force, like a straight line of force going from your foot up into the top of you. When you push, either rolling your foot in toward the big toe or pushing more under the ball by the fourth toe. And feel what happens to the back of your neck. Does one position make the back of your neck shorten and one position let the back of your neck be long? How can that line of force go right from your foot all the way up through the top of your head? It's almost like you're only incidentally pushing with your shoulder on the wall, because that line of force could extend through the floor below your foot, up through the ceiling on that diagonal from your foot to your head. Okay. And then walk around a little bit. Got to warn everybody, this lesson can lead to reorganizing furniture in the house. Because suddenly you realize, I can do that. And come and sit down for a moment. Anybody have any burning questions before we continue on this next steps of the lesson? Elizabeth. Let's see if, there, I got you unmuted.
I have more trouble on my left foot sensing that fourth toe to push from. It just seems like it's not there. It just wants to be on the big toe.
Anybody else have that, have one foot that just doesn't seem to want to get this? Okay, let's do this. And I'm sure everybody had one side that this is a little easier than the other side. So let's take that harder side and imagine that there are 5 rays on your feet from your heel to each toe, and see if you can touch those one at a time onto the floor. And if you do it with your hand at the same time, put your hand up like mine is, and it's like I can push on my thumb on this ray, and I'm doing the same thing with the same foot on my big toe, and then I push with this finger, this line, and I push with the second toe, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. And you'll feel that it requires, your whole body moves a little when you put the weight in different parts of your foot. Let's try this in standing for a moment. So you stand up, you put your hand out on the side of the foot that's your more challenging side, and put the weight on the pinky toe side, like really far, and feel how your hips have to shift over in space.
Mm-hmm.
If the hips don't go, then it's hard to get the weight there. And see if that idea of the hip shifting helps you get toward the fourth one.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that can impact it is the head. You could try this as you're standing. I'm just sitting down so you can see my head. If you tip your, you don't have to use your hands there, but I'm just showing, I'm tipping my head one way or tipping my head the other way. And depending on what you do with your head, that might make it easier or harder to get over on the fourth. So you could experiment if you tip your head a little. Does that help you get there? And feel how one way of tipping, I'm watching Elizabeth right now, but I can see when you tip your head toward the direction you're going, you don't get there as well. When you tip your head a little bit away from the direction you're going, you can get out to the fourth a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So everybody go back and find your wall. And stand so that your harder side to feel the fourth is away from the wall. And just try a little bit of the pushing and see if that helped you find a way to get the fourth a little easier. Just kind of waking up the map in your brain of the bottom of your foot having options. Okay. Now let's put both your hands, face the wall and put both hands somewhere about chest high against the wall. Yeah, and if you're sitting like Marilyn, just imagine that your hands are against the wall. And imagine or do push against the wall and see what does the weight do in your 2 feet. As you push, if you're sitting, you could just like lean forward as if the wall was moving in front of you and feel, does the weight go into the front of your feet or the back of your feet, into your heels? And which feels more powerful, if the weight goes into the fronts of both feet or the backs? If the weight goes into the front of both feet, if somebody knocked that wall down, you would go plop on your face. If you keep the weight back in your heels, feel how you maintain a little bit more of your structural integrity if that wall were to disappear. And now try standing with one foot in front of the other with your hands on the wall. So not directly in line, but next to each other, like when you're standing, but just one a little in front of the other. And bend your knees a little and try pushing the wall and see if that feels even stronger. And where's the weight in your feet? Is the weight in the fronts of the feet or the backs of your heels? Or maybe one foot forward and one backward? Do some experimenting to see which makes you feel stronger. If you're sitting, you could also put your hands on your desk and just gently, you don't have to actually push your desk over, but if you push against your desk, you can feel, if you put one foot forward and one back, it might feel sturdier, especially in one arm. And if you switch your feet, it might feel sturdier in the other arm. Okay, come away from your wall for a moment. And just like your feet have that magic spot under the fourth, so do our hands. If you push the wall and you're pushing with the base of your thumb, see what that feels like, versus pushing more toward the outside of your hands. You'll find if you go too far and try and push with the pinkies, that feels yucky. I mean, that just doesn't feel strong at all. But just look for the sweet spot for where you can feel that line of force again, going from your hands pushing into your shoulders down to your feet. That everything tonifies a little bit so that you're distributing the muscle tone throughout your body as you're pushing. And when you find that sweet spot on your hands and your feet, pay attention to your breath and how your breath can go into more of your ribs there and more into the whole space in your torso. Rest for a moment. And then once push both hands into the wall in the worst way that you found, the way that made you feel the weakest. So perhaps into the thumbs on both sides, the big toes on both feet. And press into the wall there and take a breath in and feel what part of you expands. And then go back to the place where you felt the most powerful, perhaps one foot in front of the other, the weight out toward the base of the fourth finger and the fourth toes. And push and take a breath. And then walk around for a little bit. If you need to sit down for a moment, sit down for a moment. Everybody come and sit down for a moment. And if you can, sit in front of the desk or table that's holding your tablet or your computer and put the heel under the fourth finger, kind of right about there, both of them lightly on the desk, about shoulder width apart. As if, I don't know, the image that just came to mind is you're pissed off at your desk and you just want to push and knock the whole thing over. We're not going to push that hard, but just kind of you're braced a little bit against the desk. And feel how that gets you into that a little bit forward position. And see if you can very slowly and gently push on your desk in just enough force that you can feel your feet tonify and the weight under the fourth, that there's a connection. It's just this, you can feel it go through your back, your thighs, everywhere, just engages a little bit. And right there, take a breath in. Not a lot of pressure, just enough to connect. And right there, while you're connected like that, count again and see how far you can count. And then rest your arms. Think about the width in the front and the back of yourself. See if that is shifted. And then go for a little walk and just see what walking feels like. How your feet feel on the floor. And then come on back. And I'm curious what you observed, what you noticed.
I noticed that I'm walking on my fourth toe more. I'm usually a big toe walker.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more towards the outside. Felt different.
Mm-hmm. That's the goal with these lessons is to make it as the least consciousness needed to be able to make those little changes to where you walk. And when our brain gets to feel, oh, it feels, I feel more powerful when I do it this way than that way, that makes our brains just seek out that way of being as we're moving. So that's great. Yeah, thank you, Deborah. Anyone else want to share their sensations from this lesson? Rich, let me unmute you. I got you. Okay.
Okay. I feel stronger when I'm pushing against the wall at about shoulder height. Noticeably stronger than other positions.
Yeah, it really matters how high your shoulders are in order to feel that line of force that goes through you so that every part of you tonifies equally. Because if your hands are in a different place, then like you might feel it's all in your shoulders or your back or your low back or, yeah. Thank you, Rich. Anyone notice major differences in their breathing when they use their big toes or their fourth? You just like a show of hands if you notice some differences in how the air could go in. Okay. And now just sit in what to you feels like the best sitting position, where your feet are in that rolled out position, your knees are wide. When your nose drips, it's a little in front of you. And play a moment with your breathing to find just like where's the ideal position, because if you go too far forward, that messes things up too. Just to do those exercises we did at the beginning of breathing up and down, left and right, top and bottom, and diagonals. And then when you find that spot where the air just goes in everywhere, take a breath in and do the counting and see what it feels like now. And then whatever number you got up to, count backwards from there to 1 as if you were counting a missile blast off. So make it convincing. You're all muted, so you don't have to worry about other people hearing you. So now you know why they usually start with 10, right? If you start with a big higher number, you might run out of breath before you get down to the 1. All righty. So that is it for the content of the lesson. I'd love to hear any questions, discussions, something you'd like help troubleshooting. This is kind of open time to see if there's something I can help you with.
I am looking to buy a smart watch that has a blood pressure feature. I wonder if anybody has any experience or recommendation.
So if you do have a recommendation you, for Andrew, you can go down into chat and do a chat to Colleen, who's the one who's listed on the name, and then give your suggestions for a smart watch with blood pressure. Be fascinating to have one of those as you do one of these Feldenkrais lessons, because I find that by if I am in the doctor's office and I'm getting my blood pressure taken, if I sit toward the front of my chair and find that place where my I can breathe in all directions, I can control both my pulse and my blood pressure and my frequency of respiration. So you can game, I don't know if it's useful to game the doctors, but you could definitely adjust it with the techniques you're learning in here. Anyone else? Some movement you find challenging that you'd like to hear some perspective on? Colleen.
So in the beginning, when you were doing the diagonals and doing that long line, I wasn't sure what to do with my knees, whether to keep my knees stiff or bend my knees. What's the best here?
So everybody close your eyes for a moment and visualize a line kind of like your, you know, those etch-a-sketches where you're going back and forth to make a line dark between your right shoulder and your left hip. And feel if you're doing that etch-a-sketch, you're kind of drawing this line with your eyes back and forth. If your weight shifts a little bit, excuse me, from one sit bone to the other as you do that. And in order for the weight to shift, you could roll your knee in to shift your weight to get the top of the diagonal more, and roll the knee out to get the bottom of the diagonal. Or you could keep your foot on the the base of the fourth toe, the fourth metatarsal, and there's a way your torso can come away from your leg to do that little shift up to the left. And if you leave your foot out toward the fourth, then the air can go into the bottom part of the diagonal. Whereas if you roll your foot in and move your knee, then the air has trouble getting into the bottom half of it. At least that's my felt experience. I don't know if does that make sense, Colleen? Do you play with that? Yeah.
And then does it, like when we're standing, do we keep our knees flexed a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. If the knees are locked, you've just taken one joint out of the whole chain of your body. And so everything else has to move more, and you're more likely to hurt yourself. So they don't need to be bent so much as just not locked. Other questions? You know, if you have a question, it's probably interesting to somebody else. So.
I'm really tight on my left hip booty area. And
So when you're tight, are you tight like right at the top there?
like
Right.
right in the bottom, like top, yeah, top sort of.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm just curious. Have challenges with one hip that just kind of grabs a little bit. Okay. So usually that's the part of you that is transmitting force from the top of you to the bottom of you. And it usually means some part isn't part of the party. And for most of us, it's that these top ribs and the top part of the spine isn't moving. So when our legs try and do the movement and the top of the body doesn't come along, it's pulling against that. And it feels like it has to be engaged, because if it's not really tight, you're not going to come along for the ride. So any of the lesson pieces that get this top part moving usually are what will help the hip release. And
You mean like the top rib cage or the top shoulder?
the top ribs. So if you look at the skeleton, let's see if I can get my pencil over. It's weird because it's not where I see it. It's where the camera sees it. But these top ribs up in here.
Okay.
And the ways to get them moving are doing that. Like the cat-cow, the rolling your pelvis back
Okay.
and down.
Yeah.
Or tipping forward and looking up, those arching kinds of movements. Yeah.
Okay.
Thinking about the long spine, the long stick that supports your head. And then, are you comfortable putting your arms over your head?
Yeah.
Anybody who wants to do this, if you can put your arms over your head, grab one wrist with your other hand and pull with your hand a little bit. And you'll feel the ribs right under the armpit have to open up a little bit.
Mm.
And go the other way. And when you're doing this, the side you're pulling away from is the side to sit on. Might be a good lesson to revisit. We did a little of this last month, but to come back to. Yeah, because it's one that helps everybody with their balance. So I will just make a note to work on that on Thursday too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So this is how, if you do have something that's bugging you, you mention it now, and then I build it into the lesson. But I don't know to build it in unless I hear from you. So, Noelle. Oops. I got you.
There we go. So at the beginning of the lesson, you were saying you were going to help with the power of the voice, but also it's helping with balance. Could you summarize then what we went through?
Yeah.
How those two relate?
So the power of the voice and the power of balance are both there for us when we stand or sit in a position that our lungs can move in every direction freely. And so it's the more able you are to sense when you're in a position where you're breathing well, where your breathing is free in every direction, that's where you'll find a powerful voice and power in your body. And in terms of how that impacts balance, when we're balancing, you're always moving from one position to another position, And to be able to be in any of those positions and breathe means if you can breathe in a position, you can balance in the position. If your breath is held at all, then you're going to use muscular effort and you won't be able to hold it as long. So the cool thing is, just by focusing on the breathing and being in a position where you don't feel the breath stuck in one part of yourself, that makes everything get easier. And then the other key piece in the balance is finding the ability to keep your weight under the fourth part of your foot, rather than rolling the knees in and the feet into the big toe.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And then Bill, I just unmuted you. Oops, no, it's not. Bill, it's not letting me unmute you, so you're gonna have to.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I have problems rolling over in bed.
Okay. So let me just make a note of that. It's actually related to the ribs and the pelvis and the sit bones for rolling over in bed. Because when we move, like in today, by pushing into the floor with the fourth toe, did you feel like you had some more power?
Yeah,
Yeah. So in bed, it's about noticing what parts of you are touching the bed and figuring out how to push them against the bed to roll over. And in thinking of yourself as a three-dimensional being, turning. So sometimes you think about, I want to bring my shoulder forward to roll.
mhm,
But you could also think about the side that's touching the bed has to grab the bed and push backward. And when that side on the bed pushes backward, it helps bring your body around. This is probably easier to practice if you can get down on the floor and practice rolling on the floor, because it's a harder surface, so you can feel the traction a little bit more. I guess it's a question for everybody now that we have a pretty stable group that comes to class. How many of you could not get down to the floor if I did a lesson that was lying on the floor? Is there anybody who couldn't? Okay. Okay, we have a few people, so I'm going to stay with chair lessons. But you know, you could do this playing with it by standing against a wall, which would be like lying down, except you're vertical, and playing with the surface of yourself against the wall and trying to grab that surface with your arm, with your ribs, with your bottom, the side of your bottom, with the side of your leg, and trying to use that surface that's touching the wall to twist you for rolling over. Yeah. Okay. I'm making notes to work that in next time too. Yeah, thank you. And Barbara, just a sec. I think you're gonna have to unmute yourself. It won't let me. There you go.
I was going to suggest satin or silk sheets can also be an assist.
They reduce the friction part of it. Yeah. Sometimes a harder mattress helps.
And I have a tight shoulder. If that's something I'd be interested in.
And we'll put that on the list. How many other people have tight shoulders? Yeah, you're not alone. And is it your dominant hand that's tight?
Yes.
So actually the thing that helps shoulders the most is the same thing we've been working on today, which is that no matter what you're doing with your hand, if you're in balance on yourself so you can breathe, your shoulder doesn't have to work as hard. As soon as you feel the breath seize up, like if you push yourself onto one sit bone using your big toe, you'll feel the shoulder muscles start to grab when you use your arm. But if you keep your weight under the fourth to reach up, then the shoulder is supported and then the muscles don't work so hard. It's a general a general pattern that if you use your body and the floor and the chair to support yourself, your muscles only have to move you and they don't hurt. If you're not supported, the muscles are trying to hold you up at the same time, and it's like they're at cross purposes with themselves, and that cross purposes hurt. So that's the general thinking behind it, and I'll try and come up with some lessons to help make that clearer.
I have a comment. Since I've been doing the Feldenkrais, I have got a little bit more of my sense of smell back. And I haven't been able to smell anything at all in 15 years. And I've been smelling spices, and it's very weird, but I think that's the connection. I haven't really changed anything else.
That's interesting. Let me talk to that for a moment. Have you ever watched a cat smell something and they kind of stick their head up and they kind of wrinkle their nose and whatever? There are 3 passageways on each side of your nose that the air can go in, and the sense of smell is different in the different parts of your nose. And as your head gets better supported and you can move your head a little bit, you can adjust it to get the smells into the receptors that feel it more. So it actually makes some sense that
I always thought it was just purely neurological. I guess that's where the neurons go.
as there's another general precept in Feldenkrais is that when you increase any part of the system, the whole system responds with increased function. And so you can work with somebody's foot and their neck feels better. You work with the torso and the smell feels better. I don't know. Anybody else notice a change in sense of smell? Either that or you were recovering from a light case of COVID and you didn't know it.
I mean, I lost my sense of smell 7 years before I was diagnosed. And 99% of all Parkinson's patients do lose it at 7 to 9 years before they have the onset of motor symptoms.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's something I knew. Yeah. Anybody else have that, either the loss of sense of smell? Have you noticed that? Okay.
I've often said that I've been blessed with a horrible sense of smell so that it didn't have to smell the bad smells. But I do have some of it left.
I like that, looking for the bright side of.
The thing is that if Parkinson starts in the gut and it travels up the spinal cord, I don't know about the brain, but the first area it hits is cardiac, and that has to do with anxiety. And so people tend to have anxiety way before. And the next place it hits is whatever goes into your nose. And as it goes deeper into your brain, that's why eventually it hits cognition and speech. It kind of goes in, the motor symptoms happen before there's changes usually in cognition. And it's depth of the brain where, that's the one theory, the Brock theory on it.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm just looking at the time and going, I need to end the class. Sorry, I went over. I was interested in the discussion and wasn't looking. So I'm going to stop the recording.